The gilded cage. That's what it looked like from the outside. Marrying Prince Harry, becoming the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle had seemingly won the ultimate lottery, a fairy tale wedding, global fame, access to unimaginable wealth and privilege. But fairy tales, as we all know, are rarely what they seem, and this one, it turns out, was rotten at the core. For years, the narrative spun was one of Meghan as victim, a biracial American actress thrust into the archaic, unforgiving world of the British monarchy, subjected to relentless racist attacks by the press, and ultimately forced to flee for her own sanity. It was a compelling story, expertly crafted and amplified by sympathetic media outlets. But cracks were starting to appear in the facade. The carefully constructed image of the wronged Duchess was beginning to crumble, revealing something far more complex and, dare I say, far less sympathetic. The first whispers of trouble came with the couple's departure from royal duties, their infamous Megxit. The official line was that they were seeking financial independence and a quieter life, but the reality, as it often does, seemed far more calculated. A lucrative deal with Netflix, a tell-all interview with Oprah Winfrey, and a series of carefully curated public appearances painted a different picture, one of a couple determined to capitalize on their royal connections while simultaneously denouncing the institution that had made them famous. And that, perhaps, was the fatal flaw. You can't have it both ways. You can't claim victimhood while profiting handsomely from the very thing you claim to despise. The British public, known for their stoicism and their deep-seated loyalty to the crown, began to turn. The narrative shifted. Meghan, once seen as a breath of fresh air, became perceived as a calculating opportunist. But the real turning point, the moment when the tide truly began to turn, was the death of Queen Elizabeth II. The outpouring of grief was immense, a collective mourning that transcended generations and social classes. And in that moment of profound national sorrow, Harry and Meghan's carefully constructed narrative of victimhood felt jarring, out of sync with the mood of the nation. King Charles, ascending to the throne, inherited not only the weight of the crown, but also the simmering tension surrounding his son and daughter-in-law. He adopted a strategy of quiet withdrawal, a subtle but powerful distancing. He didn't engage in public spats. He didn't issue fiery denunciations. He simply allowed the couple to operate without the institutional support they had once relied upon. This strategy, seemingly passive, was in fact a masterstroke. By removing the protective shield of the monarchy, King Charles exposed Meghan to the full force of public scrutiny. The press, no longer constrained by royal protocol, began to ask tougher questions. The couple's business ventures came under increased scrutiny, and the carefully crafted narrative of victimhood began to unravel completely. The Netflix deal, initially hailed as a major coup, started to look less like a triumph and more like a gamble gone wrong. Meghan's lifestyle show, intended to showcase her domestic goddess persona, landed with a resounding thud. Reviews were lukewarm, viewership was low, and the platform quietly distanced itself from the project. The momentum, so crucial in the fickle world of streaming, evaporated. This cooling of Netflix's enthusiasm was significant. It signaled a broader shift in the media landscape. The protection that had once shielded Meghan from criticism was gone. Coverage became sharper, more critical. The benefit of the doubt disappeared almost overnight. And with that, the stage was set for a new chapter in the Meghan Markle saga. A chapter marked by vulnerability, exposure, and the looming threat of consequences. The whispers about Meghan's visa status, once dismissed as right-wing fantasy, began to take on a new weight. It wasn't about deportation, not in the sensationalized tabloid sense. It was about reassessment, scrutiny, the quiet review that happens when the layers of protection peel away. When someone's life is intertwined with royalty, public roles, foreign security arrangements, and global contracts, their situation transcends the ordinary. Expectations shift, and when the institutional backing vanishes, those layers don't simply disappear. They are re-examined. Harry's own admissions in his memoir, Spare, had already opened a Pandora's box. Legal activists raised questions about standards and exceptions, and with the palace conspicuously absent, the inquiries gained momentum. No one declared wrongdoing. That's not how these things operate. The shield simply dropped. Questions once ignored were now being taken seriously, quietly, off camera. This is the crux of it all. Institutions don't require definitive proof to distance themselves, they only need risk. With King Charles having effectively removed the crown from the equation, anything tied to Meghan's legal standing became her sole responsibility. No royal buffer, no special consideration, just standard processes unfolding at their own pace. And that kind of exposure is deeply unsettling, particularly when everything else in your life feels precarious. Just as this pressure mounted, a deeply personal crisis erupted, shifting public attention in a dramatic and unexpected direction. Thomas Markle. The estranged father, a figure largely absent from the narrative for years, was suddenly back in the headlines, not by choice, but because of a serious medical emergency. His leg was amputated. The details were stark, uncomfortable, profoundly human. Public sympathy, a fickle and unpredictable force, became a factor. Some felt genuine concern for Thomas Markle's well-being. Others questioned the continued estrangement, the years of silence. Old conversations resurfaced, old wounds reopened. The timing couldn't have been more disastrous. As Meghan faced professional setbacks and institutional withdrawal, this deeply personal family drama was thrust back into the spotlight. Critics pointed to the silence, the lack of public acknowledgement. Supporters defended her right to privacy, but neither side swayed the prevailing narrative. The image of control, so carefully cultivated, cracked a little further. When personal strain surfaces alongside professional decline and institutional abandonment, it creates a sense of unraveling. And in moments like these, perception matters. Courts, institutions, platforms, and partners don't just analyze facts. They look at patterns, stress, volatility, and when the pressure piles up, even seemingly unrelated events can influence decisions. At this juncture, Meghan wasn't simply navigating public criticism. She was navigating exposure on every level, emotionally, professionally, and structurally. And that kind of pressure rarely remains contained. It spills into everything else. The Netflix momentum cooled, royal protection vanished, public patience wore thin, personal stress bled into view, and legal questions, fair or not, stopped sounding far-fetched. On their own, none of these would be fatal. Celebrities survive flops all the time. Family drama is a constant in the public eye. Public opinion is notoriously fickle, but when they all converge, the ground beneath your feet feels unstable. That's what Jeopardy really signifies here. Not handcuffs, not headlines, screaming legal trouble. It signifies vulnerability. Meghan's position was once fortified from every angle. If one area faltered, another compensated. Hollywood provided cover for royal drama. Royal status softened media assaults. Platform deals absorbed reputation damage. That system is defunct. There's no dominant institution intervening to stabilize the narrative, no powerful partner pushing back, no quiet signal that this is handled. Scrutiny doesn't need to be aggressive to be perilous. It simply needs to exist. Lawyers review matters they once disregarded. Officials cease presuming exceptions apply. Procedures move slower, colder, devoid of personal content. Not because someone is being penalized, but because no one feels accountable anymore. King Charles didn't need to issue threats or intervene. By withdrawing the crown from the equation, he permitted Meghan to stand alone in a system that doesn't yield to narratives or intentions. Standing alone in moments like these alters outcomes. Exposure doesn't always detonate. Sometimes it just constricts quietly, relentlessly. Where does this all stem from? This self-proclaimed domestic goddess who believes she has the authority to instruct us on everything. We know how to do all of this. It's bewildering. When someone is no longer shielded by power, their status becomes subject to the same scrutiny as anyone else. No shortcuts, no cushioning, no invisible hands smoothing the path. That's a shock for someone who once lived surrounded by buffers. Meghan's real predicament isn't one investigation, one show, or one family crisis. It's that all the systems that once absorbed stress on her behalf have ceased doing so. She's standing on normal ground. Normal ground doesn't care about narratives, intentions, or past triumphs. It reacts solely to what's visible in the moment. This chapter feels like a turning point, not because something explosive has occurred, but because the conditions have shifted. When power falls silent, it has already made a decision. When Harry and Meghan join calls for a ban on AI superintelligence, one has to wonder, what do they actually know about that? Meghan refuses to learn you are not interesting by dint of your fame. You cannot reverse engineer becoming interesting because you're famous. Usually, if it's going right, It's the other way around. You become famous because you're actually interesting and you've got something to offer. But now we gotta go back to Meghan and her report cards from grammar school. The royal family is dealing with a massive crisis. In the Houses of Parliament in the United Kingdom today, the Prime Minister has for the first time, and he did so reluctantly, but back to call for some type of investigation into Prince Andrew regarding where he's living. So the idea that in this current climate, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle will think this is a great idea for us to start lobbying against the White House position on artificial intelligence is insane. The relentless pursuit of relevance has become a spectacle in itself. The pronouncements on global issues, the carefully staged photo opportunities, the desperate clinging to the Duchess of Sussex title to sell jam and candles. It's a performance, and the audience is growing weary. The narrative has flipped. Meghan isn't a victim anymore. She's a brand, a commodity. And like all commodities, her value is subject to the whims of the market. And right now, the market is signaling a downturn. The gilded cage has become a trap of her own making. The fairy tale has become a cautionary tale. The advent calendar. Finding, not learning. You don't say. You don't say. The language-mangling Marl, reigning monarch of stupefying psychobabble, serving up melted cheese and calling it fondant. The jokes fall flat. The domestic goddess routine feels forced, and the audience quietly tunes out. But it's more than just bad reviews and dwindling viewership. It's the erosion of the carefully constructed image, the constant need to invent new words, new traditions, new narratives to justify a position that no longer holds water. The tradition has to have a beginning. You don't say. The pot-smoking pay-for-play royal at a Hilton in Toronto, jam influencer Meghan. Do they really belong there? The question hangs in the air, unanswered. A silent indictment of the couple's desperate attempts to remain relevant, to cling to a fading spotlight. The Hollywood gala, the star-studded events, the photo ops, it's all a performance. A desperate attempt to recapture the magic, the buzz, the cultural cachet that once surrounded them. But the magic is gone. The buzz has faded, and the cultural cachet has been replaced by a growing sense of unease. A feeling that something is fundamentally wrong. The Christmas-themed special on Netflix, Love Meghan, back for another round of curated domesticity. But this time, the audience is even more skeptical, even less forgiving. The soft lighting and calm energy can't mask the underlying tension, the sense of desperation that permeates every scene. She won't go there. To the extended family, to her own family, beyond her mother. Building traditions with Lily and Archie. A carefully constructed bubble of domestic bliss. A world apart from the messy realities of the outside world. It's a performance, and the audience is no longer buying it. The calls for Harry and Meghan to have their titles stripped, growing louder, more insistent. Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson mentioned in the same breath. The threat of legal action, a desperate attempt to cling to the last vestiges of royal power. Meghan Mountbatten Windsor, Harry Mountbatten Windsor. The names hang in the air. Stripped of their title, reduced to ordinary celebrity, fighting for the same opportunity, the same scraps of fame, the horror, the indignity. But the real horror isn't the loss of titles or the threat of legal action. It's the loss of control, the realization that the narrative is no longer theirs to control. The media, once so eager to amplify their message, now scrutinizes every move, dissects every statement, exposes every contradiction. The visa issue, a constant undercurrent of anxiety. A reminder that even the most basic assumptions can be challenged, that even the most privileged lives are subject to the same rules and regulations as everyone else. The silence from the places that once defended her, deafening. The institutions distancing themselves, one by one. The media platforms stepping back, quietly, subtly, but unmistakably. The support systems that once made problems manageable, collapsing. The truth is that Meghan's star power is fading, and the world is moving on. The jam and candle sales will continue, and the occasional Netflix appearance might generate some fleeting interest, but the long-term trajectory is clear. The gilded cage has become a gilded tomb.